You have likely been taught that a clean, heavily tilled field is the hallmark of good farming. However, that perfectly manicured topsoil often hides a collapsed ecosystem, systematically dismantled by the intensive fumigation, hilling, and harvesting inherent to modern potato production. The challenge is to shift focus to the metrics that actually determine success: aggregate stability, active carbon, and microbial vitality. By prioritizing these invisible factors, producers have achieved documented yield increases exceeding 3,057 pounds per acre in controlled trials. This data challenges the foundation of mechanical cultivation, exposing the hidden costs buried beneath the industry's polished surface. The modern industrial potato operation is a marvel of logistical coordination, defined by fields of geometric precision and weed-free uniformity. In this high-stakes environment, the industry prioritizes aesthetic consistency, relying on a standardized arsenal of heavy machinery to shape the land. From the initial phases of fumigation to the aggressive mechanics of hilling and harvest preparation, growers deploy massive steel implements to manipulate the topography. This pursuit of visual order creates rows that appear perfect to the naked eye. Yet this surface-level perfection conceals a systematic dismantling of the subterranean capability required for true agricultural resilience. While the field looks pristine, the biological engine beneath has been compromised. These conventional practices inherently cause significant soil disturbance, initiating a chain reaction of structural degradation. The primary casualty is the soil aggregate, the microscopic cluster of particles that serves as the fundamental building block of a healthy field. When heavy tillage equipment tears through the earth, it fractures these natural aggregates, shattering the architectural integrity of the ground. This fracturing does far more than simply move dirt. It exposes the protected stores of organic matter to the atmosphere. Once exposed, this organic material undergoes rapid oxidation, a chemical process where carbon binds with oxygen and dissipates, effectively burning off the energy reserves that the soil ecosystem relies upon for fertility. The physical consequences of this machinery are just as severe as the chemical ones. The sheer weight of heavy tractors and harvesters compresses the soil profile, squeezing out the microscopic pore spaces essential for root expansion and gas exchange. This mechanical disturbance is akin to destroying a factory's foundation to polish the floors. The equipment crushes the natural voids where air and water should circulate, leaving behind a dense, suffocated medium. The seemingly ordered surface of a tilled field often masks a chaotic, collapsed subterranean ecosystem where the physical pathways for life have been sealed shut by the very tools intended to cultivate it. To understand the scale of this degradation, broad agricultural research comparing management practices over decades has identified that intensive potato cultivation consistently degrades crucial metrics like aggregate stability. The data reveals a direct correlation between the frequency of tillage operations and a sharp decline in water infiltration rates. When the soil structure is pulverized and compacted, water physically struggles to penetrate the surface. Instead of recharging the groundwater, rainfall and irrigation water pool on the surface or run off, carrying valuable topsoil with them. Beneath the surface, this compaction creates a hard pan layer, a dense floor formed where tillage equipment bottoms out. This artificial boundary restricts root penetration, preventing the crop from accessing deeper moisture reserves. Consequently, the plant is isolated in the upper horizon, leaving it vulnerable and unable to tap into the stability of the lower soil profile during periods of heat or drought. Ultimately, the visual order of a tilled field is a deception. It presents a facade of control while hiding a functional failure in the soil's capacity to regulate water and cycle nutrients. The breakdown of soil structure creates a less resilient environment for potato growth, forcing the grower to rely ever more heavily on external inputs to compensate for the land's lost natural function. This structural collapse establishes the conditions for biological deficiencies, shifting the entire burden of production to the most fragile upper layer of the earth. The operational success of a high-yield potato crop is effectively decided within this remarkably narrow band of the soil profile. While industrial agriculture often focuses on the expansive scale of the acreage, the biological engine driving tuber development is confined to the top 10 centimeters of the earth. This zone is uniquely vulnerable in potato production because, unlike surface crops, there is no escaping the reality that growing and harvesting an underground tuber requires significant soil disturbance. The potato plant itself possesses a notoriously shallow and fragile root architecture, making it especially susceptible to the impacts of soil microbiology within this disturbed layer. Because the roots do not naturally punch deep into the subsoil like tap-rooted commodities, the plant must rely entirely on the resources immediately available within this specific horizon to sustain its growth. Within this critical 10-centimeter depth, a sophisticated biochemical transaction takes place that defines the plant's nutrient nutrient acquisition strategy. Potato roots actively release carbon exudates, complex sugar compounds derived from photosynthesis, into the surrounding soil. This is not waste. It is a calculated investment. These exudates serve as a primary food source for dormant soil microbes, waking them from stasis. In exchange for this carbon currency, the microbial community processes mineral nutrients chemically locked in the soil matrix, converting them into bioavailable forms the plant can readily absorb. This symbiotic trading floor allows the potato to access a nutritional inventory, far exceeding what its physical roots could extract alone. The logistics of this nutrient delivery system are significantly enhanced by mycorrhizal fungi. These organisms form a symbiotic association with potato roots, extending microscopic filaments known as hyphae far beyond the reach of the plant's physical root hairs. These hyphae function as a biological extension of the root infrastructure, effectively increasing the root system's absorptive surface area by orders of magnitude. The fungi act as a dedicated procurement network, capable of transporting phosphorus, nitrogen, and micronutrients from distances that the plant's own roots cannot reach. This partnership is indispensable for maximizing nutrient availability, especially considering the inherently shallow root structure characteristic of potato plants. However, standard industry protocols frequently dismantle this intricate biological infrastructure before the crop is even established. Conventional chemical fumigation, designed to eliminate nematodes and potential pathogens, acts indiscriminately, sterilizing the rhizosphere and eradicating the beneficial microbial communities alongside the pests. When this zone is sterilized, the symbiotic connection is severed. The intricate trade of carbon for nutrients halts, and the fungal supply lines disintegrate. The potato plant is left physiologically isolated, sitting in a chemical bath, but cut off from the biological mechanisms required to process it efficiently. This biological destruction forces the grower into a different management trajectory. Research indicates that a potato crop growing in a sterilized rhizosphere requires significantly higher volumes of synthetic fertilizer to achieve the same biomass as one in a living soil system. Because the microbial transport system is offline, the plant must rely on passive osmosis to intake nutrients, a process that is remarkably inefficient compared to active microbial delivery. This explains the phenomenon of diminishing returns often seen in intensive farming. As biological activity collapses, increasing chemical inputs yields progressively smaller gains. The plant is surrounded by fertility it cannot access, starving in a pantry complete with locked doors. Furthermore, the role of this microbial community extends beyond simple nutrition to the structural integrity of the field itself. Beneficial microbes synthesize natural glues and polysaccharides that bind soil particles into stable aggregates. These aggregates create a porous, sponge-like architecture in the topsoil, maintaining critical void spaces for air and water movement. When the microbiome is intact, water infiltration rates improve, allowing the soil to capture rainfall and irrigation rather than letting it pool on the surface. This structural network ensures that moisture penetrates directly to the root zone, stabilizing water availability during intermittent dry spells. By prioritizing the biology of these critical 10 centimeters, the producer preserves the functional capacity of the land. When the soil is allowed to aggregate through microbial action, it also creates a natural defense perimeter. A diverse and active microbiome occupies the ecological niches that pathogens would otherwise exploit, providing a layer of biological competitive exclusion that protects the developing tubers. The efficiency of the entire operation, therefore, hinges not on the volume of chemistry applied, but on the survival of the biology in this shallow, vital layer. Recognizing this biological reality requires a fundamental shift in how we evaluate the field, moving past the standard inventory of ingredients to assess the actual functional capacity of the system. For decades, the agricultural industry has adjudicated soil quality through a chemical lens, relying almost exclusively on NPK levels to dictate management decisions. Producers routinely dispatch samples to laboratories and receive reports quantifying nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, assuming that chemical abundance equates to fertility. However, these standard soil tests frequently function as a misleading inventory. They list the ingredients present in the pantry, but fail to confirm if the kitchen is functional enough to cook a meal. A soil test may verify high nutrient levels, yet if the biological transport system, the complex network of microbes and fungal hyphae responsible for shuttling elements to the plant, is compromised, the nutrients sit in the soil matrix, chemically present, but legally embargoed from the plant's biological uptake mechanisms. To attain a true forecast of production capability, the analytical focus must shift from static chemistry to functional biology. Soil health researchers across North America have identified 3 specific metrics that reliably predict crop performance, aggregate stability, carbon mineralization potential, and soil organic carbon. Unlike a static chemical snapshot, these indicators provide a functional diagnosis of the soil's operational capacity. They are the instruments that reveal whether the subterranean ecosystem is actually working. The first critical metric, aggregate stability, quantifies the soil's physical competence. It measures the capacity of soil crumbs to maintain their structural integrity when subjected to the erosive forces of water and wind. This property is influenced by the secretion of biological glues that bind particles together. In potato cultivation, high aggregate stability signals the presence of well-formed pore spaces. These microscopic voids are indispensable for the field's respiration, allowing oxygen to penetrate deep into the profile while creating the physical pathways required for water infiltration. Without this stability, the soil structure collapses under the weight of machinery, sealing the surface and preventing the deep aeration essential for tuber development. Simultaneously, the grower must assess carbon mineralization potential. This metric acts as a biological tachometer, gauging the speed of a robust population of decomposers actively breaking down organic residues. This biological labor is vital for nutrient cycling, ensuring that raw materials in the field are continuously processed into bioavailable forms that the shallow root system of the potato can absorb. Underpinning both structure and activity is soil organic carbon. This measurement represents the foundational fuel stores of the system. SOC acts as a crucial buffer that moderates the field's moisture dynamics, enhancing the soil's ability to retain water during drought conditions, like a subterranean sponge. Conversely, during periods of excess rainfall, this same carbon structure facilitates drainage, preventing the anaerobic conditions that stifle growth. It is a key determinant of functionality, governing the soil's ability to hold water and nutrients in suspension until the crop requires them. To visualize the interplay of these metrics, one might view the soil through the lens of a factory floor. Aggregate stability represents the structural integrity of the building itself, ensuring the roof and walls can withstand the elements. Soil organic carbon indicates the fuel reserve stocked in the warehouse, ready to power the machinery. Carbon mineralization potential measures the output of the labor force, quantifying how efficiently the workers are converting raw. These metrics reveal the soil's inherent ability to support plant life through physical structure and active nutrient cycling. With the correct diagnostic tools now established, the operational changes required to repair the factory become mathematically clear, necessitating a departure from conventional inputs toward a protocol focused on regeneration. Restoring the agricultural ecosystem requires a deliberate and strategic shift from chemistry to biology. The operational philosophy of the LOST method centers on a protocol that feeds the soil microbiome rather than solely targeting the plant with synthetic nutrients. This approach directly contradicts the established industrial convention of maximizing chemical inputs for immediate crop uptake. Instead, the strategy employs carbon-based soil amendments, such as phycoterra, which function as a vital energy source for dormant microbes. In the high-stress environment of potato farming, the soil is regularly disturbed by fumigation, hilling, and harvest activities. Consequently, the beneficial microbes residing there are also regularly disturbed. Here, these amendments act as a biological trigger. By providing a readily available carbon source, they stimulate indigenous bacterial and fungal communities, forcing them out of stasis and back into. They secrete sticky polysaccharides and glues that bind soil particles together, a process known as reaggregation. This biological construction work transforms the field from a dense, compacted medium into a porous, sponge-like structure. This textural shift significantly enhances water retention, allowing the soil to capture favorable moisture levels that compacted earth would simply repel. Research confirms that this improved structure creates a resilient environment capable of regulating water productivity more effectively, a critical advantage during variable climate conditions. Field trials utilizing these specific carbon-based interventions have documented a rapid reactivation of the soil food web, turning a sterile substrate into a dynamic nutrient exchange for the crop. However, the introduction of carbon amendments is only half of the equation. The physical management of the field must also align with biological preservation. Minimizing soil disturbance is a fundamental management principle for enhancing soil health, yet passes into one heavy-duty sequence. Others are shifting toward direct planting methods that eliminate separate hilling and planting steps. By reducing the frequency of heavy machinery traffic, the grower preserves the newly formed soil aggregates and prevents the erosion that typically follows intensive tillage. These minimal soil disturbance practices are crucial for maintaining the integrity of the soil ecosystem, ensuring that the biological progress achieved earlier in the season is not erased by steel implements. Furthermore, the maintenance of living roots constitutes a central tenet of this regenerative system. Cover crops are integrated into the rotation not just for erosion control, but to provide a continuous supply of sustenance for soil biota during the off-season. These crops act as a biological bridge, ensuring that the microbial community is not starved between cash crops. Integrating cover crops into cropping systems demonstrably increases the size and activity of the microbial community, leading to improved carbon sequestration. Some innovative producers have adopted a technique of combining fall hilling with cover cropping. This method leverages the natural freeze and thaw cycles of winter to mellow the soil structure within the hill. The increased surface area facilitates quicker warming in the spring, while the presence of cover crop roots stabilizes the hill and maintains microbial populations through the coldest months. This comprehensive strategy prioritizes the biological integrity of the field over mechanical uniformity. It acknowledges that practices like fumigation and aggressive hilling deplete soil fertility and counters them by actively feeding beneficial bacteria and fungi. This support is crucial for repairing soil damage and creating a disease-resistant soil environment equipped to fight off pathogens. The biological jumpstart effectively translates into measurable production gains, proving that the pathway to higher yields lies in the microscopic restoration of the soil's operational capacity. While the biological theory is sound, the industry demands concrete proof of performance. Ultimately, the efficacy of any agricultural innovation is adjudicated by the impartial judgment of the harvest scale. In the high-stakes environment of commercial potato production, theoretical benefits regarding soil structure or microbial biodiversity mean little if they do not translate into a measurable increase in tonnage. For decades, the industry has models. Controlled trials conducted in furrow on potato farms across the United States and Canada have subjected this specific soil-first approach to rigorous testing. By utilizing specific carbon amendments, such as Phycoterra, to reactivate the dormant microbiome, these protocols were pitted against standard grower practices. The results were not merely statistically significant, they were operationally transformative. The data documents a yield increase of over 3,057 pounds per acre. This figure represents a massive shift in production potential, validating the premise that the biological engine of the soil, when properly fueled by these targeted amendments, outperforms the mechanical and chemical substitutes producers have relied upon for years. This substantial gain in biomass is not the result of a single physiological change, but fundamentally derives from improved the crop in a state of physiological defense, diverting energy away from tuber formation to maintain basic cellular integrity. When the soil microbiome is decimated, the plant lacks the biological partners required to mitigate environmental pressures, leading to irregular growth patterns and higher rates of deformity. Conversely, plants cultivated in biologically active soil benefit from a support system that buffers against stress. The reactivated microbial community facilitates a steady, regulated nutrient supply, allowing the crop to focus its metabolic energy on tuber expansion rather than survival. The qualitative metrics of the harvest reinforce the quantitative gains. Potatoes harvested from these biologically restored fields exhibit greater uniformity and size consistency, a critical factor for industrial processing, where deviation often leads to rejection. The trials highlight that by actively feeding beneficial microbes, farmers create a homogenized subterranean environment where moisture and nutrients are distributed evenly throughout the root zone. This leads to a crop that develops synchronously, reducing the percentage of small or misshapen tubers that would otherwise be discarded as waste or relegated to lower-value feed markets. The biological vitality of the soil directly influences the developmental geometry of the crop, converting potential waste into marketable yield. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of this data lies in the efficiency of the input inventory. The documented yield increase of 3,057 pounds per acre disrupts the linear logic of industrial agriculture, which typically posits that higher yields necessitate proportionally higher chemical loads. The soil on many farms acts like a locked warehouse, stocked with fertilizer that the plant cannot reach due to a broken biological transport system. By nurturing the soil microbiome with specific carbon sources, the producer unlocks these reserves, allowing the plant to utilize the chemistry that was already present but biologically unavailable. Validation comes in the form of heavy trucks leaving the field, A 3,057-pound increase per acre confirms that the biological shortage has been the silent brake on production capacity. The soil-first methodology does not just repair the ecosystem, it releases the latent potential of the genetics already in the ground. Yet, in the margin-thin business of global agriculture, physical volume is only half of the equation. The agronomic success must now face the final and most rigorous test of the operation, the financial audit. While the agronomic validity of a production system is established by the sheer mass of the harvest, the ultimate viability of any agricultural enterprise is adjudicated strictly by the ledger. In the high-volume, low-margin architecture of commercial potato production, the financial argument for soil health is frequently stronger than the agronomic one. Agricultural margins are notoriously thin, often hovering in the unpredictable single digits, which makes return on investment the paramount decision-making metric for growers. In this rigorous fiscal environment, the introduction of new biological inputs is often viewed with immediate skepticism, as new technologies usually imply higher upfront costs and increased financial risk. The grower is effectively asked to gamble liquid capital on unproven results while facing unpredictable markets. However, the comprehensive financial analysis of the controlled trials regarding soil amendment programs reveals a data point that reshapes this risk profile entirely. Analysis of the trial data reveals an impressive 11,001 return on investment for the soil amendment program. This metric is not a theoretical projection, but a documented reality observed across diverse operational footprints in the United States and Canada. Using phytoterrain to translate this into operational terms, for every single dollar spent on activating the microbiome through carbon-based amendments, the farm generated $11 in marketable product. This ratio stands as a staggering outlier in an industry accustomed to fighting for fractional percentage gains. It effectively creates a financial multiplier that outperforms standard fertilizer efficiency by a significant margin. Conventional chemical programs typically adhere to the strict law of diminishing returns, where each iteration of the soil avoids this plateau, offering a linear pathway to profitability by unlocking nutrients that have already been paid for but remain chemically unavailable. Beyond the direct revenue generated by yield surges, the economic efficiency of this method is further compounded by a substantial reduction in operational expenditures. Research indicates that fostering a healthier and more robust soil microbiome helps reduce abiotic stress on the crop, while creating a disease-resistant soil environment. A biologically active soil creates a competitive environment that naturally suppresses disease pressure, thereby decreasing the reliance on expensive fungicides and corrective chemical applications. When the soil functions as a competent immune system, the producer is no longer required to purchase immunity in a plastic jug. This reduction in input costs directly enhances the net profitability of the farming operation. Furthermore, the shift toward minimized tillage, which is often paired with biological amendments, results in immediate savings on diesel fuel and heavy machinery maintenance. Fewer passes across the field reduce the mechanical overhead per acre, directly impacting the bottom line while preserving the structural integrity of the field. The long-term economic advantages extend well beyond the immediate fiscal quarter, utilizing soil quality to reinforce the operational resilience of the farm. Improved soil health practices transform the soil structure into a more stable asset. As aggregate stability improves and organic carbon levels rise, the land becomes more resistant to erosion and drought, preserving its productive capacity for future seasons. Consequently, the substantial 11,001 ROI achieved through soil amendment programs effectively transforms soil health from a perceived environmental expense into a primary profit center. This financial reframing is crucial for securing the widespread adoption of these methods in large-scale agriculture, demonstrating that ecological benefits can translate directly into tangible economic gains. Efficiency in this context is no longer defined merely by the cost of inputs, but by the velocity of the return. This financial reality secures the method's place in the future of large-scale agriculture, forcing a re-evaluation of how capital is deployed in the pursuit of yield. The industry stands at a threshold where the definition of power is changing. The true measure of agricultural efficiency has finally shifted away from the sheer scale of mechanical iron. It is now defined by the microscopic vitality of the soil ecosystem that supports it. This biological focus is uniquely critical for potato production, where the operational necessity of harvest disturbance demands a resilient subterranean foundation to ensure recovery. Transitioning to these biological metrics offers a validated pathway toward higher yields and stabilized economic returns, turning unavoidable impact into manageable stress. As the industry faces climate degradation and market volatility, investing in soil biology establishes a sustainable and economically viable trajectory for the future. Adopting these protocols requires looking beneath the surface to measure what truly drives production. If you found this analysis valuable, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.